Welcome back once again to howtocookgreatfood.com. If you haven't already, please click that button and subscribe to our channel. On the menu today, and as you can see right there, really beautiful rosemary with lamb and potatoes. Nice kind of basic stew really. Pretty easy to make. Just got to get that meat nice and tender. I'll show you how to do that. Let's go and do it. Okay, let's get started on this. So I've got a decent sized pan. I'm using a wok. You're gonna need a lid as well. And I've got some oil in there. Today I'm using a canola oil, but you can use a sunflower, an olive oil, a corn oil, it's up to you. So that's heating up really nicely. Now, here's my lamb, which are kind of nice little chunks, a little bit of fat on there, which I don't mind, but there is no bone. Let's get that in. Now this is not a bad quality lamb, but even with a really good quality lamb, we're going to have to make sure it's nice and tender. So let's get some seasoning in now. Bit of salt. Slowly with the salt. We can always add a little bit more later. Black pepper, of course. A little bit of dried bay leaf. And here I've got some dried rosemary, which of course goes so well with lamb. So at this stage we want to just throw this around in the pan. As you can see, it's changing colour as the heat's getting to it. We're on quite a kind of lively heat at the moment. There you go, it's just catching nearly all of the edges. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to add some water into that. And still on this high heat, let's bring that to a boil. And then we need to simmer it for about 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. This way we're going to ensure that that meat is really lovely and tender. So, with the lid off, bring it to the boil, and then just let it go, you know, like I say, 10 or 15 minutes. I'll be back then, give it a stir every now and then. Okay, so as you can see, we're about sort of 8 minutes in at the moment. I just wanted to show you this. It's bubbling nicely. There's too much liquid in there. We need to burn some more of this off, so let's give it another 5-6 minutes on this high heat, and it will evaporate out. That's why we didn't put the lid on. But we're pumping some fantastic flavours in there. That bay leaf's really doing its job, and the rosemary, of course, was pretty much the star of the show with this dish. So keep stirring it. We want it to kind of burn down now. We're not going to completely get it, you know, 100% dry, and we don't want it that dry. There you go. That was like 6 more minutes. So what we've done now is we've really give this meat a fantastic head start. And it's going to be beautifully tender. If you're making this with beef, you'd really have to do the same. Chicken and pork's not too bad. Lamb, beef really needs to be tender. Because as we start adding stuff in, which we're about to do now when I'm chatting, I've got some lovely chopped garlic there, coarsely chopped. Now, this is optional. I love this. This is some smoked paprika, which I'm going to get in there. You can find that. It's really, really good. Be careful with paprika because it comes in, I think, 3 types. One is sweet, one is hot, which is pretty much just like a chili, and then there's this smoked one, which I just think is really, really wonderful. Now, let's get some onions in. I'm using a red onion today. I always say go ahead and use a white or brown if you want. And let's now just pan fry this. It's kind of pretty dry now, as you can see. Let's pan fry this for about 2 to 3 minutes, again on this high heat. Keep stirring, otherwise it's going to burn. There you go, just a few minutes there. The onions are doing their thing as well as that garlic. Now what I've got here is I've got some chopped tomato, fresh tomato, and we're now going to reintroduce a little bit more water. Let's give that a little stir. Now I'm using water, but you could use a stock if you wanted to. I prefer water because it just kind of gives me a bit more control of what's going on. I know what's in water, nothing. Whereas stock is already flavoured. And that's looking great. What we're going to do now is pop a lid on that. Keep it on a high heat, 4 to 5 minutes. What should happen is our tomatoes will break down and create a bit more of a sauce. We may add a touch more water, we may not, depending on the tomatoes. Let's take a look then. Let's take a look now, see how we're doing. As you can see, I've got quite a lot of juice out of those tomatoes. If you haven't, add a touch more water or stock. Now, this is a lamb and potato stew that we're making, and there's no sign of potatoes yet. And that's because I've cut my potatoes about the same size as the lamb. And once they go in and they're cooked, it's done. And a big mistake that people often make is the potatoes are done, but the lamb isn't. So I'm trying to put them in as late as I can. The next step is I've got some tomato paste or puree here. Just going to add a kind of real richness to it. You can see the amount I put in, like 2 of those spoons or one of those little Tetra Pak type things. This is going to give it a nice kind of rich colour and thicken it. Okay, now I'm going to add a touch of water. Give it a nice mix. Lid's going to go back on. And this time, I'm going to let it come to a boil, which will take a couple of minutes. Then I'm going to simmer it for about 10 minutes. I'll be back then. Let's jump in now and take a look. A bit of steam out for you. Look at that, it's fantastic. It's really come together beautifully. Been simmering for a little while now. And it's now that we can add our potatoes. Like I said, I've kind of done them about the same size as the meat, maybe a little bit smaller actually, fairly irregular. And about the same amount, maybe a few more potatoes bits than the lamb chunks. Let's get them in there now. You need to taste this now for salt. You might want to add a little bit more maybe. I'm not going to, it's okay for me. And then again, because we've let the temperature drop, let's turn the heat back up. Let it rage a little bit, just for like a minute or so. Then turn it back down, lid on, simmer that, probably for about 15 to 20 minutes. We might need to add a little touch of water every now and then, just check it. You don't want it to get too dry. Because we've added the potatoes now, we've filled the pot out somewhat. So, I mean, I quite like that consistency. I don't want a soup. But yeah, just check it out, maybe add a little bit more water or stock. I mean a dash. I'll be back in about 15 minutes. Okay, so off goes the heat. Let's take a peek inside. There you go, that's been stewing beautifully for some time now. So what we're looking for is our potatoes to be right. So I usually get like a kind of kebabby type stick and I just sort of pop them in. And I'm really happy with that. They're not falling apart, which means I've got a little touch of a bite to them. But as you can see, they prod really easily. Well, that one's breaking there. But yeah, they're nice and tender. That's kind of where I want them to be. Now, of course, if you wanted, you could add some celery, some other herbs, some peppers, anything goes really, doesn't it? It's a stew. So this is just a lamb and potato with rosemary, pretty basic stuff. I've tested our lamb, which really is beautifully tender. Hope you enjoyed that, hope it helps. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel because that really helps us out. And we'll see you again soon. Lots of love, bye bye.